All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. So just to go over some housekeeping notes, since this is only the second video I put on this channel, still new, still going through the motions there. This channel is going to be devoted to post-game recaps for both Iowa men's basketball and Iowa women's basketball. 2 weeks ago, I did one on the Crossfire Kinnick. What I want to do on this channel is I want to do post-game recaps for every single game I'm able to see live, in person, on TV, on streaming, and just talk about things I think are interesting in the individual games I see. It's kind of an idea I had a couple of years ago, around 4 or 5 years ago, just to do my own thing, talking Iowa basketball. And I didn't know if it was going to come in a vlog format like this, but it's kind of what I decided on just because it seemed like the best route for what I wanted to get out of this. And I figured, why not? It's going to be fun. I'm just really excited to get going. So anyway, moving aside the housekeeping, moving on to the game. As you can tell by the title of this video, we're going to be discussing Iowa men's basketball, their first exhibition game, October 30th against Quincy. Kind of an interesting game. So, and uninteresting also at the same time, because exhibition games, they are what they are. They don't really matter. You're often playing teams that are not D1. And if you're playing a D1 team, it's generally as a charity exhibition. And there's so many caveats that come with that. You're not playing competition that's comparable to even the bye games that Iowa will eventually play throughout the course of November against, your Alabama A&Ms, your Arkansas States, whom have you. So obviously you have to have a lot of reservations when you're going through your analysis for a game like this. So there's certain things you kind of have to just take with a grain of salt. You have to obviously understand that your athletes are going to be bigger, faster, stronger than most athletes that you're going to see on the other team. Maybe the other team has a former football player or whatever. But the athleticism difference is going to be magnified. And you always have to have that caveat. On top of that, you're playing to win, but at the same time, you're also experimenting. You're doing things that would you really do if you had a win now mentality, if you really were invested that much in winning the game? Not really. The coaches are probably going to throw out a lot of looks, just be like, oh, hey, I want to see this set. I want to see what this player can do if I test them, even if maybe this player isn't that comfortable doing XYZ thing, and I want them to do XYZ thing just to test them a little bit. So what I think is the best way to analyze a game like this, I think you have to be really process-oriented. If you're results-oriented, that's just not the right way to approach a game like this. Because the results are going to be, they're not going to be indicative of anything, because the competition is indicative of anything you'll see the rest of the year, even in your worst games. So there's a lot of caveats to go with that. But moving on. So I want to start with defense first. And I think that's natural because I think most people who've been following Iowa basketball for long enough recognize the offense is ahead of the defense generally. So I think I want to discuss kind of my thoughts about some of the things that I saw on that end. So I think it's interesting. Looking at the tendencies, mostly man-to-man. The only times they really went with zone looks were in baseline out-of-bounds unders, which is their general trend they have under Fran. Just to limit scoring opportunities, they just want the opponent to throw the ball near half court and reset their offense. So not much to say in truth about Iowa's zone looks, but in terms of Iowa's man-to-man looks, it's kind of interesting. So I think there's and you gave us 76 points. I'm not going to be too results-oriented like, and the amount of points doesn't necessarily matter that much to me. But just like breaking down some of the things I saw from individual players, I think the first thing that I really, really want to talk about defensively is the second unit, because I think you have 4 newcomers amongst that second unit, all freshmen, and you have 1 sophomore in the second unit who didn't have a super big role in the previous year. So there's a lot of question marks about pretty much everybody there to some extent defensively. And for the most part, I think I'm really happy with what I saw from that group. The nice thing about this is it's not a well-attended game, but honestly, kind of from a scouting point, that's honestly kind of nice because it makes it easier to hear the players. And I heard that unit communicating well, which is good to see. You hear Brock and Josh all the time calling out things, like seeing that. You heard Owen calling out things. Ben Cricky using the starting lineup, but I liked what I heard from him from a communication standpoint. But getting back to what I thought of the second unit defensively, it's kind of interesting because I give awards out for both the game ball, just the best player I think overall in the game after each game, but I also want to give out after each game a defensive/hustle player of the game award, just because I think it's important to highlight that kind of stuff. That stuff goes into winning, and I did not expect going into this game, but man, it's like, I'm just going to be honest right now. I really liked what I saw from Price from a mentality standpoint. He's probably going to get that award for me. It's not that he's the most athletic guy, and I think most people who take the time to understand the film, watch his film, can understand that. But like the mentality itself and how he approaches defense, I really love. There were several times when I was in their 1-2-2 press look, and him and Josh Dix were alternating at the top of that press in the second unit. Patrick was at the top of the press as you'd expect for the starters, but going back to the bench unit. But I really loved his activity at the top of the press. And there were several times when he almost had to get pulled back. So there were a couple instances we were pressing pretty consistently in the second half with that unit. And he was often at the head of the press. And there were a couple times when we decided, let's get out of our press, let's just drop back and play our regular defense. But at the same time, like he was still running up to the ball, it's like seeing and trying to deny the pass from getting in bounds. Like I love seeing that. And it's almost like the coaches had to tell him, hey, Price, get back. Which is like you can say okay, he's kind of doing his own thing. But I just love the fact that he's taking a real serious approach to playing defense and really trying to make an impact. And got a block and a steal. And it just shows. I wasn't necessarily expecting that, but I just love his approach defensively. And that's just something I didn't really expect. In terms of other things that stood out from that second unit defensively, I talked about Josh Dix also being at the top of the press. Somebody in some of the cameos I remember from the early season last year, he's someone I really remember liking defensively, again, more than I thought I would. And he didn't play that much this season we're on. I don't really want to evaluate guys based on garbage minutes too much because I don't think that's really fair for a variety of reasons. But watching him here when the game was still competitive, it was competitive for a while within single digits. And the way he approaches defense, I also like. He's generally in the right position. I talked earlier how he communicates well. I think he's more athletic than people probably realize. And I remember liking him defensively last year. And one thing I was really curious about is how he would hold up upon further inspection. I want to see if he would confirm my thoughts about what he's capable of offensively. And I think for the most part, yeah, I can get behind him defensively. I think kind of bold prediction is he might compete for Iowa's best defensive player alongside Tony. Obviously, you need to let the season play out to see which one you would eventually take. But I think that's probably more of a debate than people would probably realize. I really like what I see from Josh defensively. And another thing's like, I kind of liked Brock Harding defensively. Now, here's another, again, understand that the opponent isn't really capable of taking advantage of the fact that he's really scrawny at this point in time. But one of the things you realize when you watch Brock is, and this showed in this highlight film to me, it's like I kind of expected this. He's the most quick twitch athlete on the team. Like his change of direction, change of pace, like his agility, it's just the best in the team. So moving side to side, moving laterally, I really like him moving laterally. I don't remember him honestly getting beat off the dribble, but I don't honestly remember him being tested that much. And again, even if he's able to stay in front of people at a Big Ten level, that size at the point guard position still might be a little bit of a problem against a guy like, say, AJ Hoggard, who's just going to play bully ball with him. Excuse me. So I don't want to necessarily like crown him as like a huge defensive contributor, but I think something to look forward to is, can he keep his agility, his quickness, while still putting on weight in the coming years? If he can, I think he has the potential to be a really good defender, honestly. So I think when talking about Owen Freeman, I think he showed a little bit more from an athletic standpoint than Ben Krikke did, more of a shot blocking standpoint. I think that's something Iowa really needed. If you take a look at Iowa's KenPom numbers from last year, a block percentage of 8%, and that is the second lowest of the Fran era. You'd have to go all the way back to Fran's first year to find a team that blocked fewer percentage of shots. So Iowa just really lacked a rim presence last year. That's really obvious, and it's something that needed to be addressed. And I think in the second unit for sure, I think that shot blocking is there. I think from a vertical standpoint, I think Owen can affect the game. I think Evan Bronze can affect the game. I think Laji DeBelle can affect the game vertically, defensively. And you saw that in several instances in this game. So I think that's going to do a whole lot to really raise the floor of what I was capable of defensively in the second unit. And from a side, moving his feet side to side standpoint for Owen, didn't wow me. It's kind of what I expected. It's probably going to be a problem at times, but obviously it wasn't tested in this game. It's kind of a to be determined that way. Iowa played drop coverage throughout the entire game for their fives, whether it be Ben, Owen, Laji, what have you. They all played drop coverage. They didn't extend too far out in their hedging. Except, I think there was one time that I remember that Owen did do a good job of icing the ball handler and forcing retreat. But I probably need to see more before I'm ready to go too crazy about what he's capable of defensively from a lateral standpoint. I do like the fact that he's capable of affecting shots to the rim. And that'll bring me to my final talking point for our bench defensively, which will be Laji Dembele. So this is probably more of a mixed bag than I think will probably be reported on. I kind of try and tune out of, honestly, a lot of the coverage for Iowa basketball. I did see one highlight posted of his chase down block, which is just like, what's that guard doing? It's like, he clearly saw Lodge out of the corner of his eye. It's just like, he decided to just challenge him, and it's like, come on, dude, what are you doing? Don't be embarrass yourself in front of thousands of people. Like, what are you doing? But anyway, it was a really cool moment for Laji. And you can see in that play, he can affect the game from a vertical standpoint. I think he got several rebounds in traffic, which, again, caveat the competition. But he does play with physicality that I like to see. But to be perfectly honest with you, he was probably the weak point defensively of maybe the entire team, honestly. So I counted on 3 separate times when he got blown by badly guarding the ball. And it's not one of those cases where he's like, oh, he's kind of getting beaten, he's kind of riding the guy and using his physicality to make him up. I'm like, no, it's like he just completely got blown by, wasn't able to make an impact on the play at all. And it's just like, man, I would really like him more from a defense standpoint if he was asked to play the center position. Because you can see, he has the physicality. I don't think he has a lot of bad weight. It's mostly muscle. He can affect the game vertically. I would, like, and maybe you could say like, he's a little undersized, but I think 6'8" and 6'9", he can pull off playing the center position, given how physical it could be. But playing the 4, it's like I'm very serious concerns, honestly, about whether he can play that position defensively. Which is really frustrating because I'm actually really high on Logi the player. And I'll get into this more as I'm talking about what I was doing offensively. But I think there's real reasons to be excited about Logi and his future at Iowa. I just don't really know if it's a this year kind of thing. Not that he won't play this year, and that he might not play up to his potential like people were probably hoping for this year. Now, again, after one game, one thing you also have to say, and this is another thing to keep in mind with exhibitions, is you're going to be playing guard-oriented lineups. So maybe it's a situation if he was being asked to guard guys several inches shorter than him, and you just struggle with that. And maybe against a more conventional Big Ten 4, or maybe even like a Chris Murray type with a little bit more athleticism at that 4 position, maybe he can handle guarding a guy like that more. But based on what I saw, I really thought he's probably struggled the most amongst any player guarding the ball, moving from side to side. And it wasn't just one time, it was multiple times. Though, again, talking about the future, Ben and Evan, when they're gone, the center duo is going to be Logi and Owen, with Riley, if he sticks around, being the third center. I really like those first 2 as a center combination. And I'll get a little bit more into that with the offensive content later. But I really like that combination going forward next year. I'm really looking forward to watching that combination next year center. I think it's really going to be a good combination. And I think they're going to contribute in ways this year. I have some reservations about Logi and his impact this year based on like how well he moves his feet. And you just kind of expect it. The dude's 250, 260 pounds, whatever he's listed on the official roster. You kind of anticipate that maybe his side-to-side movement would be an issue, but I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't. I kind of think my first instinct is going to be a problem going into this year. Transition over to the starting unit. So I kind of want to focus on Ben, one of the main newcomers for this year, Ben Cricky. Probably one of the more disappointing defensive performances, not in the sense of like he's making a whole lot of mental mistakes, or he's not communicating well because I thought he was communicating well, or he's not doing the right thing. It's more as like he has just very limited athletic range. Like in terms of just like wingspan, jumping ability, height. The shortest athletic range of really any of our main forwards, whether it be Evan, Logi, Owen, etc. And it's like, and I was just talking earlier about how last year's like, it was a major problem how he did not have a real presence around the rim. Phillip was good in many ways, but that was severely lacking, and Iowa needed that presence. And it just kind of feels like a similar kind of problem. And to be honest with you, like, Phillip was a little bit more capable of getting out and guarding some of those ball screens and moving his feet a little bit. Not like, oh my God, wow, worthy, but like I felt like he was capable of that. And you pretty much just saw Ben sit back and drop coverage going against screens and did not impact those kind of plays, and just felt like whether it was the guy with the ball or the guy rolling to the rim, either one was going to be able to score against him. And several times they did score around him, like multiple times against him around the rim. And that's just very disappointing. And it'll be interesting to see how the freshmen impact the game offensively. Because if they can find a way to impact the game offensively, they're going to be pushing for starters' minutes potentially at some point. I don't know if they will overtake it for a starting job, but there probably will be people calling for that at some point, based on what I saw defensively. But Ben does bring stuff on the other end. So it's a to be determined. I think I'm not fully on the start Owen Freeman train yet, because I think you have to give him more time. But I'm kind of inching my way towards there. But again, game one, let things develop as they be. Elsewhere in the starting lineup, there are a couple of mental breakdowns from a variety of players, and not like, oh my god, what are you doing? It's only a handful, and honestly, there are some mental breakdowns from the bench unit too. So I don't really want to pick on the stars too much. I thought Peyton showed good physicality. There were a couple of times when when people tried to back him down in the post, and they were not able to move him. Which again, exhibition game, he's a bigger athlete. You wouldn't expect him to, but again, that's kind of nice to see. He's going to be asked to bang at the power forward position this upcoming year, and he's going to have to go against guys like maybe like Trey Kaufman-Renn from Purdue, or Malik Hall, who has a little physicality from Michigan State. He's going to have to guard those guys in the mid-post area, low-post area, and he's definitely more put together than his brother because he's had more time in the program, obviously. I think that's still to be determined, but I generally liked his physicality in this game. So moving on, I don't think there's too much really to add for Pat or Tony. Whatever you think of them defensively is probably what you would get out of this game either way. Desante Bowen got the starting point guard job. Really happy to see that because he is a naturally talented player. And I want him to get some time to develop. I really wish he had been given a longer leash. Not that I think he played great at times last year, but it's also like, let players play through their mistakes just a little bit when the situation warrants it. And there's some situations where it's like, no, you shouldn't be so nitpicky about playing the freshmen. Just play them last year. But I digress. That's water under the bridge. But related to Desante, kind of a high, inconsistent, I would say, defensive game. Amongst the guards, he was probably beating off the dribble the most, if I would say. And not just like is a couple one-on-one breakdowns, which is going to see, but also like a couple of times where he got them and was able to stop the drive. And I don't really, so like, inconsistent, I would say, is an accurate term. What I do love the mentality, though. He was consistently trying to make things happen. Maybe too much at times. There was a couple times he got overextended and they drove by him. But I like the mentality itself. Just rein it in probably a little bit. Be more consistent about guarding the ball one-on-one because he's the point guard. He's going to be asked to do that consistently. And I think he has the potential to be a solid defender. Not the best athlete, but a good one who is capable. And I really want to give him credit for this because this is definitely something I didn't anticipate going this game. It's really great to see from just a physicality standpoint. Multiple rebounds in traffic. Really love seeing that. In general, like both him and Tony got really stuck in there rebounding wise and really competed physically. And you kind of expect that from Tony because he's a big dude. But it was really nice to see Desante compete for several rebounds amongst multiple players. There are times when he got rebounds around 3 guys. And there was, I think 2 times he got rebounds in like contested traffic. And one he got stripped after that. But I still love the fact that he's competing for the ball like that. I really love seeing that mentality. And I think he was trying to make things happen defensively. He was getting passing lanes. He was trying to be disruptive in our 1-2-2 press game. So, like, I don't want to nitpick too much on some of the one-on-one breakdowns. I just want to make note there needs to be more consistency from Desante there, but I do love the mentality aspect of it. He is trying to make things happen. Speaking of the 1-2-2 press, this is kind of something I kind of wanted to mention. And this is another thing you have to keep in mind. When you're playing an exhibition, you're experimenting with different approaches that maybe you might not try in a game, or you sense blood in the water, sense, hey, we're more athletic than them, whatever, we can do this, and we're not necessarily going to be able to do that later in the year. A lot of pressing, obviously, and they really extended their press. And this is kind of another thing for Logi to keep in mind. So in our 1-2-2 press, what have you, in that bench unit, you'd have Logi, Owen, whatever spot, doesn't really matter, in the back line. And what you really saw in this game is Iowa really, really pushed everyone forward defensively. You saw the guy at the top of the press, he wasn't sitting back necessarily around the free throw line. He was really trying to deny the inbounds pass coming in. You saw the two guards. So let's say, for example, to give names to this, so Price was often at the top of our press. You'd see Josh and Brock Harding really step up and really try and deny an inbounds pass. And you'd often see guys from Quincy come back here to see the ball. And a couple times I noticed that Logi in particular, I didn't notice this from Owen or Ben when we were pressing with them. They generally stayed back from what I saw. Logi sometimes got way overextended and got into almost like the opposing 3-point line, the opposing free throw line, where it's just no, you really need to probably limit yourself to half court. And there was one time in particular where they threw a lot pass all the way across the court on Logi's side, and they ended up getting fouled. I don't want to harp too much on Logi because I think he does have potential offensive, and I think he's maybe being asked to play out of position, honestly. But I think there's a couple. That's just an example of a mental breakdown where it's you need to pull back a little bit. You're not really athletic enough to press that high and make a recovery. And he got burned for it one time. But again, it's an exhibition. They're trying stuff out. In a real game, they're probably going to ask Logi to sit back further and protect that deep pass. But if he makes that mistake again, Iowa, it's going to burn Iowa. So I'm hopeful that it's on film now. The coach can tell him, hey, pull it back a little bit. So anyway, those are generally my thoughts on Iowa's defensive performance. A mixed bag, I'd say, which I kind of expected, honestly. But I think there's some reason to be optimistic that certain players can make an impact defensively. So now going to the side that people just generally don't worry about offensively. It's interesting because we got off to a really slow start. Missed a lot of open shots, but I shouldn't overreact to shooting from one game anyway. So, and it was guys you expect, like Payton was 1 for 5. He was missing several open shots. You don't worry too much about that kind of thing. But going through offensive tendencies that I made out, it's kind of interesting. It's I made a note at halftime that there weren't really that many touches for Ben Krikke on the block, and I was starting to think I didn't remember him actually getting a touch on the low block in the first half. Most of his work is done at the free throw line and elbows, which is interesting. It's a little bit of a changeup, not too dissimilar from what Chris or Keegan were sometimes asked to do, but just a little interesting. And what you saw from Ben is catch the ball at the high post and pretty much went left every time. I don't think he showed one counter move to that, which on the one hand might be concerning if he wasn't capable of just dominating competition as is. I don't want him to pick something like that because he doesn't need to have a counter move in this kind of game. It's not really relevant. He can just do whatever he wants out there against this kind of competition. So yeah, he just went left every single time and scored around the rim. And yeah, that's what I saw. I expect more diversity in what he's capable of showing from a scoring standpoint from the high post area as the season goes along. He's going to have to, but again, that's to be determined. I'm not going to, that's a nitpick that I don't really want to hold too much against him. And when you talk about Ben Cricket at the high post, it's kind of interesting. You just pull up his advanced stats from his time at Valpo. This is bartorvik.com. I like going to this site just to see what certain guys shoot for the mid-range. And the last 3 years of Valparaiso, he shot 43% on mid-range twos last year. 2 years ago, he shot 44% on mid-range twos. And the year before that, he shot 47% on mid-range twos. So he's a guy who's capable of hitting shots in that range. And he shot more mid-range twos last year than he shot layups or dunks around the rim. So that's his comfort zone. So I was trying to build an offensive philosophy that centers around his strengths. And I think as I start to see him show more, I'm probably going to really get behind him. And I might retract my Owen Freeman love as I see more from Ben. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and that's something we'll obviously see as the year comes along. The first touch on the block was like Iowa ran that play where they faked the ball reversal, and then one player goes one way. I might as well just draw this out. I'm bad at explaining this. And this was the first play of the half, too, so you can tell this was a really point of emphasis. Like, hey, let's try and get him the ball on the block this time, just for a little change-up. So, yeah, I always had Ben here in the low block. And you see this all the time from Iowa. Sometimes we do it at the top of the key, but a lot of times, like I remember Joe Toussaint, we ran this a lot where like we would fake him dribble one way, like so, but then he would come back instead of like reversing the ball. He would fake come back and then throw a pass down in the low post. And it didn't result in this time because they sent a double team and then they skipped it across. And I believe it was Peyton or Patrick who wound up with a wide open three, and then we got an offensive rebound on that. It was a really nice little opening set to start the half. Something we run pretty consistently. So to be determined on Ben Cricket. From an offensive standpoint, I don't really think there's much to add for what I saw from the starters. I think Tony definitely showed a comfort level. He wants to get that mid-range. There's one time in particular where it's like, though, he took one dribble inside the three-point line off like a pump fake or something and shot like a real on two. It's like, I'd like you sidestep and take a three or just go all the way to the rim. But that's his comfort zone. And he made a couple mid-range shots. And if you're in your comfort zone, you hit the shot, like that's the most important thing. The players have to be comfortable when they're out there. Still a really good cutter. And in general, this team really cuts well with football. And there's a lot of good passing. Guys found cutters. A couple times when guys were cutting one way and the ball was thrown behind them just because there's still some chemistry to be developed. But those kind of things you expect to develop throughout the course of the year, so you don't really worry too much about it. But Tony's always been a great cutter, and he showed that a couple times in this game. It led to a really good and one-on-one situation. It's like, yeah, that's my dude. I think Peyton and Patrick, nothing really different on that front. I think this is kind of nitpicking. It's going to sound like a problem, but I don't really consider it a problem. I think based on what I saw last year, DeSante two times a little loose with the ball where he just lost the handle of the ball. Now I don't really want to go too much into this because I saw him play last year, and he wasn't loose with the ball then. So like, it's the first game, what have you. I'm not too worried about him being loose with the ball, but it's like, I hope that doesn't develop into an issue, but I don't really anticipate it becoming an issue because he showed it last year. I don't really think that's going to be an issue. His pure handles. Decision making, and we'll see how that comes along. I don't think there was a whole lot in terms of like, oh God, like what are you doing kind of moments. I think for the most part players play a smart game. with some exceptions, but nothing I think is unforgivable from a passing standpoint. So going to the bench unit, again, focusing a lot on the bench unit just because they're all new and we're all trying to get accustomed to them. So I think it's kind of interesting, like talking with somebody yesterday, I think they probably have a false impression about like what Brock did in this game. Like, I think you kind of look at his stat line, like 3 turnovers, only 1 point. How many shot attempts did he attempt? Did he attempt like 1 or 2? He attempted 3, 1 and 2 from the free throw line. So like, it's kind of a mundane stat line. So you think, like, oh God, did he really play the whole? But honestly, like, I really liked what I saw from him again. Like you saw, again, we saw from the highlight film, he's the most quick twitch athlete, and just in creating separation in short spaces on the team. Not loose with the ball. Love to see that. Really, really good pass finisher. Like, you gotta love cutting off the ball with a guy like this. There's 2 separate occasions where he threw dump off passes to guys that in his field of vision, they were behind his field of vision. So a really good awareness for his guys are, even if he can't see them. And he connected on those passes. There was 2, if I remember correctly. And there was one really, I kind of like this kind of passing. And a late pass to Riley Mulvey. Like, I wish I saw it better because the stanchion kind of blocked my view of this. But from what I can tell, did a really good job of taking an extra dribble just to create a better passing angle for Riley coming off a roll to the rim late in the game. That's something I really saw from Brock in his highlight films. It's like taking an extra dribble to create a better passing angle. I love stuff like that. I think he's the best. He's probably the best passer on the team from day one. He's the best pure point guard on the team. He just is. And I think someone that looks at his stat line and sees like, oh, 3 turnovers, like, oh God, was he throwing the ball around a lot? I mean, not really. There was 1 turnover that he was hustling and just throwing the ball back in bounds and just happened to go to a Quincy player. Like, who cares? There was one time, is one of those situations again where like one guy's cutting and he's throwing to where the guy was cutting from. It's just miscommunication. There was really only like 1 turnover where like he was holding the ball too long and the pressures eventually got too much and he got stripped. But again, those are all things as he gets more accustomed, he's going to, hey, move the ball, etc. I'm not, he saved 3 turnovers, like, and 1 point, like, oh God, bad game. I disagree. Honestly, I liked what I saw. And yeah. Though from a shooting standpoint, it's interesting, like, he doesn't get his feet square, but it went in warm-ups, didn't really see it in the game, so that's a to be determined. Price, pretty much the shooter you expect to be, and he's really the one who broke us out of that slump in the beginning of the game. He hit 2 threes to really break the lid off the rim, and that kind of helped propel Iowa to eventually taking over the game. Pure shooter, quick release, good height. It'll be interesting if he grows an extra inch or 2 over the course of next year, like his brother did from his freshman sophomore year. But I think he won't have any issues getting his shot off. And he was as advertised offensively, and that's a good thing. Josh Dix, interesting. He tried a couple things off the dribble. There was one time when he dribbled to the elbows and then took a fadeaway. Didn't make it. I like the fact he's trying stuff like that. I think he has more versatility to his offensive game than just a catch and shoot guy, and I'm really curious to see how it develops. I think there's a lot of people who are like, because I did listen to the post-game media press conference with Fran, and he talked about how it was a neck-and-neck competition between Josh and DeSante for the starting point guard position. And I think a lot of people probably like scoff at the idea of Josh playing the point guard position, but to be honest, like, I think he's just like, there was one time he was coming off a fast-paced situation. And he was near mid-court and he went behind the back. He looked smooth as hell. got to the rim, scored. It's like he's got something to him, and he's more athletic than people realize. I don't necessarily think he could guard maybe like a 5'11", 6 foot really quick point guard. I think if he were to play the point guard position, Tony would probably be asked to play that guy. But I think he's got a lot more there. I'm curious to see it develop. There's some flashes here. I'm really excited to see him this year. I'll say that. So I buried him way too much on defense. Well, I don't think I buried him way too much, but I think it was a little harsh on him defensively. But I really like what I see from Logi. So this is kind of something I was interested in evaluating this game. So I came across this video over the summer where it was discussing how Logi had played for Mali in the 2021 U19 FIBA World Cup. And he's listed from New York, New Jersey on the team site, but there was an interview on social media from the Iowa basketball official account where he talked about being from Bamako, Mali. He talked about moving to Europe and then to the statesides. A well-traveled individual. But one of the interesting things about pulling up the stats from his time at the U19 World Cup is he took 58 total shots in that tournament. 36 of those attempts came from the three-point line. So he shot the majority of his shots from the three-point line. That was the role he was asked to do on the team. But the one caveat with that is in those 36 attempts, he only made 7, 19.4% it says here. That's obviously not good. He was 10 of 10 from the free throw line tournament. So he's a shooter. You can tell, like, okay, his role on that team was to be asked to shoot the ball, clearly. At that time, I think he was only listed, he's 6'4", 6'5". Listed, yeah. 2 years ago, he was listed at 6'4", so he's obviously undergone a growth spurt. He was probably a guard at that point in time, asked to space the floor. So that's where he's comfortable playing. But at the same time, it's like 19%, like, okay, like, so is he a really good shooter? Or is he just kind of a chucker? Like, what's going on here? And I think another caveat is Mali was the worst team at the U19 World Cup. So it's like, okay, how much of that is just not being on a very good team and the shot quality just isn't very good? He's going to get better, more wide open shots playing for Iowa this year. I can guarantee you that. And I had a question like, would I buy into his shot? And honestly, I'm really bought in. I think he's got a really nice shot. Not a lot of wasted moment. Looks clean. I really like his shooting potential. I buy him as a shooter, even though like most of what I'm evaluating is based off warm-ups. He didn't take any threes in this game. He only attempted 4 free throws. He made 3 of those. But just based on what I saw from warm-ups at the free throw line, I like what I see from him. Now, in a game, it's different because in a game, teams are going to force him off his spot. They're going to test his shot. He might have to shoot a ball on the move, which I saw him in warm-ups and free throw line. He's obviously shooting from a standstill standpoint. So I don't know what he's going to be like shooting-wise in that situation, but I think I'm excited to see what he's capable of shooting-wise. I think there's a lot of potential here. And another quote I kind of saw from the media day preseason-wise for Iowa basketball was the Fran wanted to try and ask him to be more aggressive offensively coming this year. And now that you see how Iowa plays, I kind of see why. So what I really saw, like I noted this with Ben earlier, Iowa really got him the ball at the elbows, the high post, the free throw line a lot. The same kind of thing for Logi. A couple times, caught the ball near the free throw line and played a high-low game with Owen. And we didn't play a high-low game with Ben in the game because he's the lone, I guess, true center there. But we played a high-low game pretty consistently with Owen and Logi. And I liked that combination. They connected on 2 of their 3 high-lows. There was one case where it's like, I don't know what happened, and because the pass was so woefully short, I'm just going to assume it was deflector, like just something weird happened. But like, I think Logi showed the ability to he connected with Owen twice. I like seeing that. I think there's a lot of potential there. And if Logi shows the ability to shoot from that range, I think that'll keep the defense honest and then open up more space for Owen in that high-low look. Because the thing is, like, if Logi isn't a consistent shooter from that spot or isn't willing to take that shot, the defense is just going to sit back into Owen's lap and they're just going to double team and just dare him to shoot. And this is where it's like, okay, it's like, and this is why I think Fran is trying to push and shoot more. It's like, you have to be willing to take that shot. Otherwise, it's just going to make things more difficult for that high-low game. And he didn't shoot from the high post because, again, he didn't take any jumpers. Not that he had to, because the high-low look was open in this game because it's an overmatched opponent. But it's something he's going to have to probably take that shot. And I'm excited to see how that develops. I think he's got real potential as a shooter. Maybe not this year because maybe he's getting adjusted to the game, the speed of the game, whatever. But I think he's going to be a good shooter for us. I really do. Maybe not the versatility from a dribble drive standpoint, but again, I think that's to be determined. I think he really is more of a center. I think I need to see more of him probably from a dribble drive standpoint, maybe drive and closeouts. So going to Owen Freeman the last little bit here offensively. I would say there's not a whole lot to go over just because, again, it's kind of like Ben where it's like he's just bigger than the other team. So there doesn't need to be too much complexity to his moves. I thought he had a couple good up and unders, a couple good moves. I think he showed some fluidity there. Again, it's a to be determined because the competition is going to wrap up. But I think it's generally a good start. 2 for 5 from the free throw line. I think he's capable shooting-wise. Not the quickest release, but I think at the center position, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. There's not too many centers who are really going to be out there contesting him that far out. I think it's mostly to be determined there. Although I did like what I saw, but again, to be determined. And kind of and I forgot to mention this, and it's kind of a shame because I think this is kind of interesting. Like going back to really defense for a moment, because I kind of want to talk about Evan Bronze for a second. I haven't really talked about Evan yet, and it's kind of you don't want to say he's an afterthought in this game, but he only played 3 minutes at the very end in garbage time. And you say like, okay, so in your head it's like, okay, don't expect anything from him this year. But honestly, like, and like it's warm-ups, it doesn't really matter, but like debatably the best athlete on the team. it'd be interesting to see what his vertical measured out to, because like the ease with which he gets up there at his size with the amount of muscle he has, it's like a football player playing basketball, except this is a guy who's played D1 basketball for a good team in Belmont for several years. So it's like, okay, so like, it's interesting to see. Like, I don't know, I want to see more of him. Weirdly, which I don't think I was necessarily expecting to have that mentality coming in this game. I didn't know what to expect there, but like you look at the way he can like get up vertically with how physical he is. And we talked about the high-low game with Logi and Owen earlier. There were a couple high-low looks to him, and the ease with which he got over everybody and caught the ball, it's like, It's like, man, there's a lot here athletically, man. And like when I say he's the best athlete on the team, that can almost like some might say, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does that say more about the rest of the team, or does that say more about Evan? Honestly, I think that says more about Evan. I think he's really that kind of athlete. And honestly, it's like, given kind of some of the athleticism concerns I have with Ben, I think Owen's more athletic, but maybe a little limited athletically, and still a freshman, still getting used to the physicality of the game. I think Logi is still maybe not the most side-to-side. Laterally, best defender. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see Evan and maybe more than just like garbage time to me, because you see that athletic range with how like easily got up and caught the ball on some of those high-low looks, and how he got up on some of those dunks and warm-ups. Like, you're kind of curious, like, what could he do defensively? Like, you might see line situations where like they just put him in for straight defense. But the one caveat I say that they never tested him. Quincy did side to side. I don't think I ever really once saw him have to really move side to side. So like it could be that maybe he really struggles in the side to side movement. But I don't know because I didn't really see enough, and I'm kind of disappointed I didn't see that because if he's capable of that, I think he's probably deserving of more than just like 3 minutes in garbage time in the exhibition game. His offensive game probably isn't as varied as Owen or Ben or even Logi's, but like again, like if he's capable defensively, given how physical he is and how much bounce he has, I'm really curious to see what it's like when he gets into a stance. I'm really curious, and I don't know if I'm ever going to see it this year in anything but garbage time, but I kind of want to see it. He's an interesting one. And I don't know if I was anticipating that coming in. So anyway, 51 minutes. Wow. So anyway, moving on to player awards for the game. I said this earlier, and I really mean it. I really like the way Price approaches the game from a defense standpoint. That mentality is just really needed. I love that enthusiasm for playing defense. I love that want to. I really love that shit. So he's going to get my defensive/hustle player of the game award. I think there's several players who came in with the right mentality from a defensive standpoint. But Price, I think, was really kind of kickstarted that, and that was really good to see. It'll be interesting to see how he holds up defensively as the year goes on, because there's some athletic limitations, and he's a freshman. But again, defense is about want to in many ways, and hey, if you want to, I'll ride with you, man. I'll ride with him. So, game ball is kind of an interesting one, because to be honest with you, thinking of the several players, Ben was really productive for what he was asked to do. Tony was really productive for what he asked to do. Peyton and Patrick were productive in moments where they asked to do. Several players on the bench had their moments. So really, you can realistically give this to several players. I think my first blush, I would probably give it to either one of Price or Owen. And because, again, like what I said with Price earlier for what he kind of kickstarted defensively, he got us going, making 2 threes early in the first half and it was a struggle. Yeah, I probably will give Price the game ball. It's not in the sense like he showed like, oh my God, the most varied game ever, but he did exactly what you wanted him to do. Like in theory, he's a 3-and-D guy, and he did that. He played his role to a T, and like I think you got to give credit to that. So I think Price gets my nomination probably for the game ball. It's kind of interesting because you kind of look at the rotations. He was the 10th player to get in the game. He's the 5th guy off the bench. Not that's that big a deal because all those bench players came on the game at relatively the same time. And as the game went on, they just went to straight up hockey line shifts where it's just like 5 in, 5 out. Josh was the first guy off the bench coming in for DeSante, which I think makes sense because I think Josh is really going to be an interesting player this year. But Price, like it's interesting, the guy who I give the game ball is theoretically gets number 10 in the rotation, which comes back to, I think, another thing where the coach commented like, oh, this is the most depth I've had in a while or whatever. And with some of these like kind of statements, you have to take them with a grain of salt because it's kind of a constant theme. But I think this is more of a case. I don't know if this is the most depth we ever had because that 2021 team was loaded with depth. I mean, you had Chris Murray off the bench. He didn't play, and he's a first-round pick now. 4 total NBA draft picks on that team. It's like, no, that team had a lot of depth too. But I don't think this is the most depth he's ever had. However, I do think we have good depth. So I think Fran is justified in praising his depth. I think, to be honest with you, like even something like Evan, who maybe people don't have expectations for, I'm kind of interested to see what's capable. If he played for Belmont, played minutes for Belmont, he's our 11th guy, and honestly, like, he kind of looks like he could offer something if we really needed to a pinch. So I'm buying into Fran's depth comments to a certain extent. Not the best depth ever, but certainly good depth. It'll be interesting to see if we eventually develop a go-to scorer it felt like it was more of a share the rock kind of game, which is why it feels like the game ball could go to several players. But anyway, moving on. Normally in this segment, I preview the upcoming opponent, but I don't want to preview teams that aren't even in the KenPom top 200, top 150, whatever. I'll preview games against mid-majors, but not North Dakota. Yeah, North Dakota's who we play first. I don't want to preview a game like that. I just don't. I don't want to waste too much time on that. It's not interesting. Not that we can't lose that game. I was at the Eastern Illinois game. Oh my God. I don't want to relive that, but I don't anticipate this team to lose a game like that. So 2 games next week. I'll be at the North Dakota game. Won't be at the is it Alabama State or Alabama A&M? I don't remember. It's one of those Alabamas. I won't be at that one because I'll be in Charlotte for the women's basketball game against Virginia Tech. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to giving thoughts on that when that comes around. So yeah, I think this is, for the most part, a good start to the season. Not overwhelmingly good. I think there's some things you can nitpick, but I think it's a fun start to the season, and I think there's reasons to be optimistic to an extent. But we'll see what comes out of it. But anyway, we'll see how that comes. Check you later.